Oh my gosh, I was gonna try to have my hair down for this video, but it's way too hot. Does that look okay? No, not really, but anyway. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another book review. So for today's book review, I wanted to do more novels. I did graphic novels and children's books so far, and I do have another one where I review the Etsy graphic novels, but I'm still debating if I'm gonna post that one or not. But for today, I am going to be suggesting some YA novels. YA means young adult. That is preferably my favorite genre of books, that fantasy and contemporary. And these are just a few of them that I personally enjoyed, and I actually have some notes written down here because I was meant to film this video like a year and a half ago when I wanted to start YouTube, and I still have like all the stuff I wanted to say on this, so I might be looking to the side from time to time just to see what I wrote down, because some of these books I haven't read in a while, but I know I wanted to suggest them to you guys because I do love them. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first one I have is actually one that I just saw in the bookstore, and the cover art really intrigued me. And this book is called The Dangerous Art of Blending In by Angelo Sirmilis. Butchering names, maybe, sorry. But this book really caught me by surprise because I didn't know what it was about. I remember just grabbing it because it looked cool. I know it's like judging a book by its cover, but I mean, hey, in this scenario it worked out well. And this story is about a boy named Evan who lives in a small town with his immigrant Greek parents. He's currently in a closet because of his highly religious and abusive mother, who does not agree with his ways of life, and it gets even more dangerous. And it gets more dangerous when him and his friend Henry start developing romantic feelings for each other, and they have to try and ignore it. So I remember, I'm pretty sure I finished this book in maybe like 2 days because it was just so well written. And obviously, like, books like this, usually the chapters usually finish in like kind of like cliffhangers where you want to know what's gonna happen next. So it really kept me enticed in the story, and I wanted to know how it was gonna end, how it was gonna happen as fast as I could. So it was one of those books that was like, read it all day, most of the night, and then finish it the next day. Some of the points I made in this file that I'm reading right now, that I made like a year and a half ago, it was the first book that I personally read that had an abusive mother and not an abusive father. I know it can go either way, but most of the books that I read, it was usually the father that was more abusive than the mom, or like either they weren't like in the picture. You really get to see how some religions see certain communities, like the LGBTQ community. In this book, like, they think about it negatively, and sometimes it gets a little hard to read, but I mean, it's just goes to show how some people view different cultures or ways of life. The print in the book is fairly large, or it's just chapter 1, so you shouldn't be getting too many spoilers. So it was, like I said, a quick read, especially for those that are quick readers. The chapters are also fairly short, and don't be intimidated by the size of it, because like I said, it was a very quick read, and trust me, once you start it, you'll want to finish it as quick as possible. And this book is actually based off the author's life, so is that kind of like a spoiler? The next one I have is called Someone Like You by Sarah Dessen. or Deason. And this book follows two best friends This story is about two best friends named Hallie and Scarlett, and they're the typical BFF duo where one's more loud and outgoing and the other one's more quiet and stand-backish. Being good friends, they're there for each other no matter what, even when, I believe when Scarlett finds out she's pregnant with her dead boyfriend's baby. So this story takes a really, like, dark twist, and I haven't read this story in a while, but I do remember it just being so moving. And I mean, if you look at it through a YA perspective, it's kind of like Hallmark movie-esque in a way. It's obviously more serious than a Hallmark movie, but just the way that some scenes are written, you're kind of like, really? But I just love that it's a story dynamic that's not just based off a girl falling in love with a boy. It's about two best friends dealing with a difficult time together and trying to get through it together. So the notes I put for this is that, like I said, this story really shows the reality of friendship. It's not perfect, it's not always going to be easy, but if you are truly good friends, you'll make it through. It's going to be one person solving the problem. You guys have to either work together, and even if things are falling apart, you have to find a way to make it come back all together. It touches teen pregnancy in a way that it doesn't glamorize it. I find that on social media these days, like Instagram teen moms, even YouTuber teen moms, sometimes it seems like they glamorize it, and I know they probably don't mean it on purpose, but it kind of looks like they try to glamorize it, make it look like it's so easy and so nice, and when in reality it's not. So I do like that this book shows a more real, I don't want to say that teen moms out there, you're not real. I know you're real, and I love a lot of you guys. I follow a lot of you guys. But it shows more of like the hardship of teen pregnancy and what the consequences are. And it shows that, yes, the person that's carrying the baby is affected, but it can also affect the people around them. So I thought that was an interesting perspective. And this is where I was mentioning that it's kind of like more like the typical YA books or like the Hallmark movie kind of things, where one of the characters goes from like preteen to young adult, where they get more rebellious, they listen less, they sneak out and all that. So like that part I'm kind of like meh, but it does add more to the story than not just like the pregnancy and all that. So, and it does work well with the story. I'm not saying that it made me not like the story, because it actually worked very well, which is why this book is on this list. And there is some romance in it, but it's not just focused on that. And again, the print is fairly big, but the chapters are longer. So do what you will with that information. Okay, the next one I have is Dream House by Mattia Bisognin. It's an Italian name, so I'm butchering it for sure, but she used to be a YouTuber that I really liked. And this book is about a girl named Amethyst who The story is about a woman named Amethyst who finds the house of her dreams one night where she's lost, and this lovely couple invites her in to stay the night. But she ends up staying a lot longer than she thinks, because the house holds more secrets than you would ever think. So this is pretty much like a horror based, but it's not so scary that you're like not gonna want to finish it if you're like not squeamish, but like you scare easily, because it does have ghosts and like supernatural stuff, but it's not so scary that you're gonna like be like Joey and Friends and put it in the fridge. Friends reference. I find that it's more like anticipation, kind of scary, like thriller. So I find it does justice to the book. The main character, Amethyst, and I hope I'm saying it right, is so relatable. She's quiet, she's awkward, but there's also this mystery about her where you're like, who are you? Like, what's your deal? So she's one of my favorite characters from any novel that I've read. The ending, I'm not gonna spoil it, but oh my gosh, the ending. Like, if you love, like, catches you off guard, ending of books, like, read this. I remember I finished it and I was just staring blankly at a wall for like 5 minutes because I couldn't believe what I just read. It's so good. I'm not gonna spoil it, but if you love twist, like ending twist in books, the writing in it is very, 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 very beautiful. It's almost like poetic, because that's kind of like Martia's style. You can clearly see what she's describing in the scene and how the character's feeling, which obviously, like, you have to do in books. But I find, like, this one, like I said, it's kind of like more poetic. Although some people might not be a fan of this because it's almost like 1930s style writing, just because, again, that's like Martia's aesthetic. So if you're not a fan of that, maybe this wouldn't be the best for you, but I'm sure if there's an audiobook of this, I would even recommend to read the audiobook, just because the twist at the end makes this book. And, like, obviously, like, the whole storyline, too. And the print's a little smaller, just because I mentioned the print from the other books. The print's a little smaller in this one, but nevertheless, I give big kudos to Martia. She's currently not on YouTube anymore, but I used to be, still am, a big fan of hers, and kudos to you, Martia, because I still really enjoyed this book. The next one is what I think every bookworm should at least read once, and that is Eleanor and Park by Rainbow Rowell. This book is so good. It's so good. So it's set in the I'm gonna have to look off on the side because I want to give the description justice. So I want to read how I made it here. Set in 1986, this story is about two young misfits who somehow cross paths and have this amazingly adorable, tragic love story. Eleanor is a young adolescent who has a rough life at home and school, but is very smart and mentally strong. She deals with an abusive stepfather and has to help her mother take care of her younger siblings. Park is kind of in the middle of the school clique. I don't know. Like, he's not like an outsider that gets bullied, but he's not exactly popular either. He's kind of just like in between. And he is insecure about his body and Asian heritage while trying to please his very masculine dad, who doesn't always agree with his life choices, aka his comic books and his music choice. A lot happens in this book. Like, a lot. You really have to pay attention to the timeline to really, like, know what's going on. But it's so beautifully written that it's worth it. I find it has a more realistic approach to, like, young love than most YA novels have, which is kind of like not that realistic. It's kind of more like a teenager's fantasy more than anything. And it really shows, like, how some people on the outside could look like they really have it all together, and they have it all figured out, but on the inside that they're really struggling, and that they want help, but they don't know how to ask for it. And it shows like how some people are living in unimaginable circumstances, and that you can't always judge people from what you just see. Trigger warning that this book does deal with child abuse and body image and bullying and domestic abuse. So if that's something that's either going to trigger you or it's not kind of your thing, then I would stay away from this book, because it's written so realistically, and I know some people might get like affected by it, so just be warned with that if you are interested in this. They are very important topics in books. Like, I'm not saying that it's not. It is, and it's, again, very well written in this book. But some people that either have traumatic experiences based on that or are dealing with stuff like that right now, this might not be the best book for you to read. I will say though, if you're doing this for a school project, it is a very good book because of all those topics, because you can add that into like your book report and do more research on it. So, school kids, as long as you don't get triggered. Again, the text is kind of like small-ish, but it's very important to remember that it switches from Park's point of view to Eleanor's point of view. So you really need to make sure you know whose POV you're reading to be able to follow the storyline. Last but certainly not least, by the way, these aren't put like from best to worst or like anything. They're not in order. I just grabbed and go. So the next one and the last one from this video is All the Bright Places by Jennifer Niven. One of them, maybe another one. And just holding this book makes me sad. So again, I want to describe this book as best as I can, so I'm going to read the description that I wrote like a year and a half ago. This is the story about Finch and Violet, two teens who find each other at critical moments in their young lives. Since Violet is grieving over her sister's death, and Finch is really interested in death and every day is trying to find something to keep him wanting to be alive. It follows their journey through young love and ends with a gut-wrenching tragedy. So again, if you're triggered by suicide or suicidal thoughts, or I'm trying to remember if there's like self-harm in this. There might be. So again, if that's something that's going to negatively affect you, I wouldn't read this book. But if you are able to read it, I describe this book as tragically beautiful. It is so beautiful, even though it's such a tragic story. And I think the reason that it's so tragic is because it's like, it happens. Like, it's something that happens very often and it shouldn't. So I think that's what makes it really sad. Again, it's so beautifully written that like after you dry your tears from the ending, you'll want to like start it over again. It deals with mental health, especially suicidal thoughts and depression. So again, just have an open mind when you go into this, because it's a heavy topic. It's something hard. It's hard to read, especially if you've gone through it yourself. So just make sure you're in the right mindset before you read this. and I'm reading a very important point that I put here, is that Violet and Finch don't fix each other. They don't get together and everything's flowers and sunshine. They're both broken kids that can't fix each other, which I find is something that you don't see very often in YAs. Usually it's that the boy meets the girl and that everything's rainbows and sunshine. Their relationship is very compatible, don't get me wrong, but they are still two souls that are very, very damaged, and that sometimes that's just the case. You can be perfect for each other, but it's not the right time, it's not the right place, and that's just a sad reality. It's like no matter how happy they make each other, they are still struggling with their own battles, and that they are dealing with stuff that's outside of their relationship that still affects them. So that was kind of a sad note to end on, sorry. But those are my suggestions for some YA novels, and I obviously have a lot more. You don't see my entire bookshelf right now, but like I have a lot. I have not read them all, and I have more back there too. I have not read them all. I'm hoping to be able to start reading more. I need to read more. But I do have some more books that I will be recommending, so stay tuned for that. So yeah, that's my video for today. I hope you guys liked it. Give it a like, give it a comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye guys!